Attention startup leaders. Are you strapped for time but hungry for strategic insights? Introducing Managed Chaos, your go-to podcast for navigating the startup world in less time than your morning commute. Join us as we share expert advice, real-world examples, and actionable strategies to help you scale your business, allocate resources effectively, and achieve visionary results. Tune into Managed Chaos and join a community of like-minded innovators on the path to entrepreneurial success.
It seems you can't talk about any business venture these days without AI coming into the equation. It's taking over products, companies, conversations, jobs. Is there a way for startups to take advantage of the AI wave? Welcome to Managed Chaos Podcast, where we give you the startup business rundown in less time than it takes for you to get to work. I'm Katrina Purcell.
And I'm Rachel Anderson.
And today we're talking about AI and the startup. So Rachel, this is such an interesting topic, and I feel like you cannot throw a stone without hearing someone talking about AI, reading something about AI. How should startups be thinking about it?
Yeah, AI is obviously everywhere now. And I have just seen more and more things come out about AI the more we get comfortable looking for it, truthfully. And so I think the first thing to note for startups is that AI related ventures was the number one most funded topic from investors last year. So there is an incredible amount of money being thrown into the world of AI. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean all of those things were pure AI ventures. Those could be feature additions, product enhancements, other tangential things that use AI to advance something that's already happening. But still, that's a huge, huge category. And we don't see that coming down, both in a stock market perspective, which I think is a good indicator sometimes of where our society or our culture looks for value, and then also from an investor perspective specifically. And so I really see a lot of startups and a lot of smaller companies, or I should say early stage companies, kind of in three different waves of AI use. So I've talked to leaders and companies where they're all in. They've decided this is indeed the future, and they're incorporating AI into their products, into their features, into their practices. Everything is about AI. And so that really is like our, adopters, so to speak. Like they're going to be on the front wave of figuring out where and how AI fits into the future kind of world of startup and business in general. Then I see some companies that are really trying to sort of play catch up, like not truly catch up, since AI is still sort of on the new precipice of figuring out all the things, but they've identified now that AI is necessary, and they're just sort of throwing things at the wall, trying to figure out which of these avenues, products, AI tools work for their company. And they just sort of seem like they're behind a little bit. They're relying on everyone else that's pioneering to figure out the things, and then they take the best of what they think works and really put it into motion with their company. And then finally, I see startups that have not done anything on the AI front, and they're just focusing on their path and what they're up to. And I don't think that that's bad either, but they're definitely not looking at AI sort of at all. So what of these should the startup be doing or not doing? There's not a clear answer. I will say AI can be a powerful tool, but also a powerful distraction. And so if you don't know exactly what you want to do with AI or what you want to achieve by looking at AI, then that can really distract from your overall goal, which is to build a thriving company, build a product that matters for people. So startups should understand the role AI could or should play within their company, and definitely not shy away from it, but use it or look to it as something that can be a great aid, but also have its own drawbacks.
I think that's so important. So AI has become such a buzzword. I'm not sure anyone actually knows what it is anymore. And so I feel like, folks are just saying, oh, we use AI in our product. And then people are investing in it without necessarily understanding, is there a benefit to using AI? Is it providing value? Is it adding to the overall product? So that's a great way to think about it.
Yeah,
What
and
about,
well, if I can, you mentioned something that I think is actually a really interesting observation. So I have worked with plenty of companies previous to the last, I'll say like 2 years, where before AI became such a buzzword and sort of a buzz concept, they were already doing things that are essentially AI. So let's talk for just a moment about like, what does it mean AI? Well, before AI became AI, it was simply taking data and automation and finding ways to accelerate or enhance something that they already do or offer. So, what that looks like from a process perspective, you use Google Analytics and the automation of that information coming in to then make improvements. And maybe you would take the Google Analytics and you'd put it into an Excel spreadsheet that already had formulas that were attached to the numbers, and it would automate all the outcomes so that you knew exactly how these things played together, right? So that is a form of automation and could in theory be considered a form of that like early aughts AI. Or similarly, I worked at a company where they had a tool that anytime you took action on one of your files within the tool. So think about like Google Drive. If you saved a document in there, you downloaded a document in there, it would log that, and a certain number of actions put together would automate a response to someone in charge saying something like, hey, maybe something's amiss here. This isn't normal for this user. Well, that's also a type of automation in AI. So I think it's a great conversation and thing to consider that AI isn't necessarily brand new, because a lot of companies were already going down that route of how to use an automation or kind of a artificial intelligence to do something better or faster or more efficient with their products. But the way that we consider AI now, where we're talking about almost no guardrails sometimes on what it could be, is very different. Very, very different. And so now you have the chat GPTs, you have design softwares, you have algorithmic things, you have a whole nother level of using data almost untamed to produce an automated outcome. And I think that that's where when I talk about it either being a great tool for you or a distraction, that's really where that kind of red flag, green flag situation can come into play.
right? And really putting in the effort to some of those generative AI models, the data that you're using to train them, and it becomes a lot more complex at that stage.
Yeah.
So what are the pros of AI for startups?
Okay, so I see a ton of pros for startups when it comes to the AI tools that are available to them. And I do want to shift slightly how I'm talking about it, since I did kind of just take us on a detour. And I want to focus more on AI as an aid to your business rather than how you're going to use AI in your service or product, because I think that has so many other parts to the conversation and can be so specific to what you do. So I'm just going to kind of put that over here to the side, and we're just going to focus on AI as a tool. So I think that AI can be really great. There's a huge ability to automate tasks, not strategies. So I don't think you're ever going to be able to AI your way out of making a goal for the company or knowing what the vision is for your team, for your product, for your venture. Also, there has to be someone who's going to really check that work of AI. So you're not going to be able to get away from automating strategies, or you're not going to be able to automate strategies, but you absolutely can automate tasks. And there's so many different tools that can do that. You can also streamline certain processes. So if something is very manual, you can use AI and AI tools to automate a lot of those things and get those into a more cohesive pattern process, or fully done by someone else, a robot, whatever, the AI itself. You can also create efficiencies. So for example, I think about a lot of the designers that I've talked to. There's so much AI in software now, whether it's Adobe or some of the other smaller companies that are doing AI design specifically. Yes, there's the potential red flag of AI doing all design. But then there's also things like, hey, we took this, photo shoot for our new brand profile, but we didn't notice this one thing in the background. Instead of us manually going through and covering it on every single photo, we use AI to cover it in seconds rather than hours of a person doing it. It can also alleviate some of the workload. So if you're trying to do market research, maybe using an AI tool is really great. I mean, how long is it going to take you to go website to website to website, read through all of the information there, pull out notes into a document, then decide which of those notes are really important as it relates to your potential customer or your potential industry, and then summarize that all together for a report up to your executive, versus using AI to help you kind of scrape that information, give you summaries, highlight the specific things you're looking for. Like, that can really be a useful way to have a larger reach on your market research or your customer profiles. And it could also AI could potentially change your hiring strategy. Now, instead of saying, oh, I need a doer, I need someone who's going to be able to do the research. Maybe you hire a strategist, somebody who can, or even a data analytics person, someone who can take AI to do that doer job, and then they're the ones that actually understand the complexity of what that means for this company or this industry or this goal that we have, and they're going to find a way to utilize that information to make the next steps forward. So I think that there's a tons of really interesting ways that AI can be a huge advantage for startups as they're thinking about growing and expanding.
I agree. I know I use generative AI on a daily basis to help with writing prompts or to help just give me ideas to start with for different posts or articles that I'm writing. So I think it can be so valuable. On the flip side, though, what are the cons that startups should be on the lookout for when it comes to AI?
Yeah. So, like I said, a couple minutes ago, AI should never replace a strategy. Um, there's just something about the human complexity of how we behave that is going to be semi unpredictable to automation. What AI is doing, especially generative AI, is that they're looking at what the world is right now. And they're taking all of that information in and they're spitting out to you based on what's happening right now. This is the summary or this is the end result. However, we don't factor in emotion into AI as a tool. And so humans make decisions all the time, every day, every moment, based on, yes, logic, but also on emotion. And that can be really unpredictable. We also can't predict what the world will become. Like, who could have predicted how COVID changed everything about business, about the world, about finances, about products, about needs? And so they can't predict or forecast some of those things like they could about things that already exist. So really having a view of AI as being a tool about tasks and actions rather than strategies is going to be a really important place to start as far as a drawback. Because if that's what you're trying to replace is basically critical thinking or really understanding the potential future of where you want to go, then it's not going to be able to do that for you. Also, you're always going to need someone to check in on the work that AI does. There's no way to really get around not knowing if AI really nailed it for you, right? I mean, I don't know if you have experienced this, but there are times where I look at something immediately and I'm like, AI wrote that. Like, I can hear it. That's not how we naturally talk, or that's not how we naturally write. It's small little things. So you'll always need someone to come in behind AI to make sure that they're doing the job that you're asking them to do. I think that there's another really interesting phenomenon that we haven't really discussed yet in the world of AI, which we've already seen in another avenue, which is advertising. So I think back to the early aughts of BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed was this amazing platform. It had all these articles. It was very like social meets quizzes and different things. It was a real like moment in time where BuzzFeed just was this crazy new like wave of things. And then like every company, you figure out how to monetize your audience, right? And so they started blending advertisements with their articles, and they looked very, very similar. And so they started to blend this idea of like, we can do an ad placement in a way where we can be sneaky and not make it feel like we're doing an ad placement. And then later you saw social media do the same thing, especially a lot of influencers, right? So all of a sudden influencers were like selling products as part of their monetization of a brand, but they weren't really letting you know that it was any different than what they did every day otherwise. And so consumers started to get really smart, and we became very sophisticated to see kind of behind the curtain and know that, oh, yep, this is so very similar, but I can still tell that there's an imprint here that is different. And I think that that is coming with AI also. So if you're relying on AI to completely be an authentic voice for you, or kind of sneak around the customer identifying when it's a human and when it's a robot, I think your time is limited there. And that's a real con to AI, is that you're going to get too dependent on this being a way to do all like brand voice. And then I think it's important to also kind of mention that the biggest con is that depending on how you use it and what you do with it and how you present it to your customers, there is always going to be a question on the table about truth, honesty, and integrity. And the biggest thing about you as a brand, you as a company, is that your trust with the consumer is the number one thing that could sink a company. If you break trust too much, too often, too big, depending on what it is, a lot of companies have not been able to respond or rebound from that. And I think that depending, like I said, on how you present that information forward to your customer, that could be a huge part of a drawback for using AI in different ways. So those are just some of the things that I think you should really take a grain of salt as you look to using AI as a tool for your company, especially in the startup phase. How do I authentically build trust with my customer without going too far where I'm no longer truly trying to engage and reach out to them?
Right. It's a very great point, because honestly, the relationship that you have with your customer is really what is actually driving your success. And so making sure the customer feels heard and that they're talking to a real person, is so important for them to get their questions answered and to feel that they're actually engaging with your brand, not with a chatbot. So it's a very, very good point. And a great way to wrap up our little discussion here on AI. I am sure we will have more episodes to talk about it, but you can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram, and we look forward to hearing from you.
This was another informative episode of Managed Chaos, the podcast for startups. You can find us on all of your favorite podcasting apps, as well as on Instagram and YouTube, where we are at Managed Chaos Podcast. For additional resources or to continue the conversation, you can find Katrina Purcell and Rachel Anderson on LinkedIn.